From his very first film role in Roger Dodger, you could tell there was something special about Jesse Eisenberg. And for the last 20 years, he has established himself as a dependable and thoughtful actor and has branched off into the worlds of writing, producing, and directing. Some of his best film roles include The Squid and the Whale, Adventureland, Zombieland, and The Social Network, the last of which garnered him a nomination for Best Actor at the Academy Awards. Zuckerberg is a pretty common Jewish last name, which means Iron Mountain. And actually, the actor went to Poland to visit some distant cousins who had survived the Holocaust, and he wrote a play about it. So it should come to no surprise to anyone that Jesse Eisenberg is Jewish. Through comments by both him and his father Barry, I managed to piece together a good amount of the Eisenberg ancestral line. And so today I'm going to be taking you down that route to figure out where the family came from and when they arrived in the United States. I'm Yonah Paley, and I believe genealogy is fun. And on this episode, we'll be taking a look at the paternal line of Jesse Adam Eisenberg in order to find out how far back we can take this line. He was born in 1983 to Barry Eisenberg and Amy Fishman, and grew up in East Brunswick, New Jersey, a town that I actually lived at for a time when I was a teenager, so shout out to that town. Barry is a sociology professor and author who writes his own blog, and it was from this blog and a couple of articles that he had written for the New York Times that I was able to decipher the relationships between the members of the Eisenberg family. He and Jesse have talked extensively about their aunt Doris Eisenberg, who lived to 106 years old. And from finding her on the 1930 US federal census, it turns out that she and her mother, Ida Zuckerman, immigrated to the United States in 1920. Doris lived with her three siblings, Mildred, Murray, and Barry's father, George Eisenberg, who were all born in America. George's mother and sister had sailed from what is modern-day Krasnystaw, Poland, in the year 1920 in order to meet the father, Samuel, who had arrived via Galveston, Texas, some 7 years earlier. According to some censuses, Sam appeared to have worked in the fur industry, though according to an article in The Australian, he actually worked for some time at the Streit's Matzah factory on the Lower East Side shortly after he arrived to the United States. By finding the cemetery where the family is buried, I was able to figure out that through the burial society, the family had originally come from the town of Itzbika, which is located right near to Krasnystaw. And thankfully, I wasn't the first person to have done research on this family. A cousin of Jesse's had submitted some pages of testimony to Yad Vashem outlining some of the members of the family who were murdered in the Holocaust. And by using these records along with JRI Poland documents, I was able to piece together the next few generations of the Eisenberg line. Shout out to Sebastian, Helena, and Joachim from the Jewish Genealogy Portal Facebook group for helping out with these translations. Sam was born Shmuel Leib Eisenberg in 1890 in Izbeka, Poland, to Baruch Eisenberg and Chaya Beela Lamb. And according to the pages of testimony submitted, both Baruch and Chaya were killed in the Holocaust. And sadly, if you look at the town of Izbeka, this town was completely annihilated, and only 14 residents of the original Jewish population survived the Shoah. Baruch's birth and marriage records are indexed through JRI Poland, and from these I was able to figure out that his parents are named Joseph Jonah Eisenberg and Fega Mala. Joseph had a brother Avigdor who lived in nearby Zamask, Poland, and from finding both his marriage record along with the birth of Joseph, I was able to determine that their parents were named Moshe Eisenberg and Chaya Hinda. The 1834 birth of Joseph Jonah says that his father, who was a tailor, was around 50 at the time of his birth, which would put Moshe Eisenberg's year of birth at around 1784. So that means that Jesse Eisenberg's great-great-great-great-grandfather was born around 200 years before he was, and it appears the family lived for quite some time in that city of Izbica. There are more than 100 records indexed on JRI Poland for Eisenbergs in this town of Izbica, but unfortunately, most of these are actually only partially indexed, meaning that it has the name of the person, the year, and the type of record, but that's about it. So you need to actually find the original photo and go and get a translation or take a look and see if you can decipher anything about the familial relationship. So there are likely dozens and dozens of relatives of this direct line who have records on JRI Poland, but without looking at each one individually, it's not so easy to figure out who was related to whom. So there you have it. Jesse Eisenberg's family was from Izbica, Poland, and that wraps up this episode of Genealogy is Fun. If you liked it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. As always, I'm looking forward to bringing you more videos about famous Jews, as well as tips and tricks that you can use in your own genealogy research. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll get you next time.